at Tranquility Base. This is Houston. Can we get both of you on the camera for a minute, please?
Greetings and welcome to another video, a series I should say. I'm entitling The Demons or the Aliens, or the Aliens or the Demons. And we would soon find what I'm saying is true, but we're going to first start with the groundwork of laying the foundation of what I'm trying to convey. Because many people think that the aliens are something from outer space and different things that are pure conjecture and not facts, and those that are given some facts seem a little crazy or weird science. And I truly believe that the Bible is infallible, or I wouldn't have reason to be in it, or I wouldn't have a solid foundation of truth. I wouldn't have any joy, because my joy is based on the truth, and the truth that comes from what I know is the Bible. And of course, the Bible only has 66 books in the King James Version, but the original version has 80, which includes the Apocrypha and the Book of Enoch. Okay, so the Book of Enoch definitely tells you much about the Nephilim, the angels, the fallen angels, and the demons. So without further ado, let's get a little started here. As I said, I'm entitling this The Aliens or the Demons. But are you familiar with fallen angels? Are you familiar with the Nephilim? Are you familiar with demons? Because in the book of Genesis, chapter 6, it tells us of the fallen angels. It tells us of the sons of God that married the daughters of man, which is our women. And they left the Watchers, which is a book in Enoch. It tells you that they left their position and their place, which was in heaven, and to pursue earthly things, and to become a part of our world, and to tempt us and to seduce us and to teach us things such as fire, even music. These are things that are taught by demons. And if you were to look at the connection with the demons and what it has to say about the fallen angels in the Bible, all of the different crafts, all the different names, and also the Book of Enoch, you have to have that. And it tells you all about it. You know, how they taught us the charms and the things that we know. They taught us war and the spaceship phenomenon. Of course, I'm not going to deny that there are flying saucers, but they're demons. Okay, and the work that is going on with man's connection with demons. Come on, we're going to get into that in a second with Aleister Crowley and the scrying that John Dee did. Okay, this is all connected with the other side, because the other side they think is something good, but it's demonic. Anything that you talk to other than what we have on this side of reality is evil. Or if it's not evil, it's not in a place where we're supposed to be. Because if you look in the book of the Bible, it tells you when Samuel was contacted and the things that happen. No, I'm not an alien from outer space. I am a demonic fallen angel. I am not extraterrestrial. I am interdimensional. No, I do not come in peace. I come in the name of Satan. And my purpose is to deceive, harm, and destroy you. Did you get that? Because that's exactly what they're doing. And little do you know, it's, as Paul said, the mystery of iniquity is already at hand. It already works. And we can see from our reality the symbolism, the very powers that be. Look at them. They're being controlled by Satan. They don't worship our God. Okay? Look at the drawing by Aleister Crowley of Lam, his demonic companion. And the little gray man aliens, they both look alike. Aliens are demons. They are one and the same. Fallen angels, demon. The way, Lam or Lam is the Tibetan word for way or path. And Lama is he who goeth. And the specific title of the gods of Egypt, the treaders of the path, the Buddhistic phraseology, its numerical value is 71, the number of his book, a book written by Aleister Crowley. Look at the head on that mug. Come on, you know that's not human. And Aleister Crowley, the Satanist, is the father of Barbara Bush, believe it or not. You know, so, and he contacted this from doing rituals and evil magic that he learned from Egypt. And look at what he saw. And you don't think that this is real? Yeah, it's real. But the deception is that we are already conditioned to want to love them with movies like Paul, the movies of aliens, you know, all these different movies that is letting us, making the way for them. You know, letting you see how you would respond. Because when aliens invade the earth, just beware. Be aware that they're actually demons being passed off as aliens to deceive the world and bring forth the one world government. And it's happening. Because anything or anyone that cannot say the name Jesus Christ, that cannot say Yeshua, that cannot say Yahweh, does not give him homage, that lets you know that they are coming in the name of Satan. They're demons. They're wicked. And we should not follow them. Not gather with them, but rather expose them. And that's what I do. I expose the wickedness so that many would know. You know, because what is my life if I don't do anything for anyone else? My living would be in vain if I don't share this knowledge. You know, I know the knowledge. I know the wisdom. But I think everyone should know this, because we're being tempted every day. We're being deceived every day with their technology, with our days not even mentioning God's name. We work every day on a job. Can you say Jesus? Can you say God? Can you say, well, you can say God because that can be any God. That's just a title. But to say his actual name, can you say that? Can you say Jesus on your job? Can you wear a shirt that says anything about Jesus? No. Because the world today is possessed. Ever since, like I said before in many videos ago, ever since those Twin Towers fell, that was a symbol of power. They came in and roamed free. The demons are everywhere. Every type of liberty that you had and freedom is being taken away. Their agenda is being enacted. You know, nothing against anyone that is a homosexual or practice that life. No, I'm not against you. But I see the hand of Satan wielding the androgyny. Okay, he's wielding it all. You know, they call us angels, and demons today, but tomorrow they will call us something else. The modern depiction of an alien and the drawing of a demon isn't just alike. So he's trying to let you know back then what the demon was going to be called in the future. The alien. And there's no wonder that the Book of Enoch is banned, because it tells you all about the fallen angels, the Nephilim, and these so-called aliens that is to come. Well, they're already here, but they haven't set everything into motion yet, because this is biblical, y'all. This is biblical. And I pray that everyone sees this truth. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't have some factual information from videos. And this time we're going to go with Chuck Missler. May he rest in peace.
What we're going to focus on during this essential hour will be this strange period of time that Jesus talked about, the days of Noah. Also could be called the return of the Nephilim. Let's just jump right into it. Jesus gave us a confidential briefing on his second coming. 4 disciples came to him inquiring about his return. And he gave them an answer that's so important that it is recorded in 3 of the Gospels. He details all the preceding events, or many of them, that will occur prior to his second coming. It's like a 2-chapter answer in Matthew. It's also recorded in Mark and Luke. Mark 13, Luke 21, following. Now, he opens and he closes that 2-chapter briefing with a warning. His first remarks, in effect, are saying, take heed that no man deceive you. We talk a lot about end-time prophecy, but we sometimes slough over the emphasis that Jesus placed in opening and closing this briefing. That deception is going to be the characteristic of that age. Deceit. We are in a warfare with Satan. And what is Satan's primary weapon? Deception. Let's keep that in focus as we go, because what motivated Mark Eastman and I to undertake a book and research and these talks and what have you is the burden that we feel that there is a cosmic deception descending not just on the planet Earth, but particularly on the body of Christ. And most Christians are not prepared for what's coming. Now, Jesus, in this briefing, also made a very strange prediction. He said, but as the days of Noah were, so shall the days of the coming of the Son of Man be. Now, what did he mean by that? And this takes us then into this strange chapter, Genesis 6. And what makes this chapter difficult is that most Christians, even serious Christians, I believe, have been mistaught about this chapter. So just do me a favor and try to approach this chapter with an open mind. Let me point out, the views I'm going to share I've held for many years, but I've always regarded them as one of those things that's open to conjecture. Some people have this view, I happen to have this view, and so forth. That's fine. It's only recently I began to realize that, first of all, the alternative views are not really defendable, and I'll show you why. But more to the point, unless you understand Genesis 6, you will not understand much of the Old Testament, much of the New, and certainly have a prophetic blind spot. I'm going to show you a verse before we're all through today that many of us as prophecy teachers for many decades have read and taught and not looked at carefully. It's amazing how these verses that are so familiar to us sometimes will leap out at us with an insight that we've missed for a good part of our intellectual life. But let's go on. Genesis 6, verses 1 and 2 reads as follows. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. Now, I want you to notice a couple of things while I have this text on the screen. I want you to notice verse 1 and 2 are one sentence. That the daughters of men are the daughters that were born unto men in general. They weren't a subset. When men began to multiply on the face of the earth and daughters were born unto them, that's men in general had daughters in general. You with me? Some people try to make, you'll see, I'll get into that later, that the daughters of men are a specific subset. There's no textual basis for that. But the real issue that should hit us between the eyes, what on earth is meant by the sons of God coming in unto the daughters of men? What's translated in English Bible, sons of God, is in the Hebrew, B'nai HaElohim. Strange term, but here's the point. That term is used in the Old Testament exclusively of angels. Job 1:6, 2:1, 38:7 being well-known examples. The term, while it's strange to our ears perhaps, the sons of God is a term for a lot, and we could spend all morning on why that term is so carefully and consistently used in the Scripture for certain circumstances. You and I, we're products of John chapter 1, verse 11. As many as believed on him, he gave power to become the sons of God. Different issue. That's used of believers in the New Testament, never used of believers in the Old. There's an equivalent phrase in Luke 20:36. Now, to corroborate this view, there was a book called the Book of Enoch. I'm not suggesting that it was inspired canon, but the point is, the Book of Enoch, as it's known in history, was highly venerated by Jewish scholarship from about the 2nd century BC till about the 2nd century AD. And I'm not referencing it because it's correct. I'm referencing it because it demonstrates what the vocabulary and grammar conveyed. The word sons of God, clearly from the Book of Enoch, were understood to mean angels. Let me give you a more authoritative example. The Old Testament was translated into Greek almost 3 centuries before Christ was born. The product of that translation effort is called the Septuagint. It is the version of the Old Testament that most of the quotes in the New Testament are taken from. So it's a highly authoritative translation. And it translates B'nai HaElohim as angels. So there's no way to escape the idea that the text implies, in fact expresses, that angels, fallen angels obviously, came down and had some kind of communion, intercourse, with the women that were offsprings of Adam. That's what the text says. It's bizarre, it's uncomfortable to many, but that's what the text says. But let's go on. They came down to the daughters of Adam. The Hebrew says Banoth Adam. It technically says the daughters of Adam. Not Cain, not some subset, the daughters of Adam. Now, in subsequent verse here, in verse 4, it goes on to say something else. It says there were Nephilim, I'll come back to that word, in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. This is a very strange verse. The Nephilim, it's translated giants, and I'll explain why, in your English Bible, but the word in the Hebrew is Nephilim. But while I got the verse here, I want you to notice a couple of things. The Nephilim were the results of this unnatural union. The angels had intercourse with women, and their offspring were the Nephilim. Don't confuse the Nephilim with the fallen angels. The fallen angels were the parents. The Nephilim were the offspring. Are we together? I want you to notice the offspring are males. There are children of them which became the mighty men. Doesn't speak of any mighty women.
Right.
Now, I'm not being cute here. I'm not here. There's the reasons why I'm going to highlight this while it's in front of us, which were men, which were of old, men of renown. The word Nephilim in the Hebrew means the fallen ones. It comes from a verb, nephal, which means to fall or be cast down, to fall away or desert. So Nephilim is a noun, a plural noun from the verb. It means the fallen ones. Also associated with it in that verse at the end, it says the Hagebarim, the mighty ones, the men of renown. When this was translated into Greek in the Septuagint, the word is gigantes. It was transliterated in our English Bible as giants. They did happen to be giants, but that's not what the word means. It comes from gigaz, which means earthborn. So the Hebrew translators really said they were the fallen ones. The Greek translators call them the earthborn. You'll see why as we go forward. Now, as we go through Genesis chapter 6, it of course sets up this whole business of the flood. Genesis 6 is the prelude to the flood of Noah. And as you study the chapter carefully, you find some other strange remarks. In verse 9 of Genesis 6, it talks about the genealogy of Noah. These are the generations of Noah. We know what that means. That's a very common phrase in the Old Testament. Noah was a just man. Doesn't say he was sinless, he was justified. We know later from other passages he's justified by faith. Noah was a just man, and here's the strange remark, and perfect in his generations. And Noah walked with God. In the English, you don't pick up on this, but in the Hebrew, it's tamim. The word is used of physical blemishes. Tamim means without blemish, sound, healthful, without spot, unimpaired. Throughout the book of Leviticus, it's used of offerings. They had to be perfect, without blemish. Right? Tamim. Well, what does this mean? Noah had an unblemished genealogy. As you begin to read Genesis 6 with open mind, what it portrays is that as men began to multiply, fallen angels came down and began to contaminate the purity of the human race with these Nephilim. And the Nephilim were the source of unusual violence. It became so corrupt that in verse 12 of that chapter, it said, all flesh is corrupted this way upon the earth, that God sends the flood to wipe it all out, except for Enoch, which is removed early, and then the 8 that are preserved through the ark. Let me suggest another way of phrasing the problem. There was a gene pool problem in the human family tree that this is wiping out. Mm-hmm. Now, if this is true, the Scripture says by a mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses the thing is confirmed. If this view of Genesis 6 is correct, we ought to see it in the New Testament, and indeed we do in 3 places at least. In Jude chapter 6, Jude was, we believe, the Lord's brother, and he's talking about apostates, but he makes an interesting remark. He's pointing out that even the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness, unto the judgment of that great day. Mm-hmm. Even as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication and going after strange flesh, are set forth for an example, suffering the vengeance of eternal fire. Jude is making the point that these angels are set aside for special judgment. And what he's trying to say is, if they're set aside, how much more will you? You see, that's what he's... But the point is, he makes a remark here which tells you some interesting things. These angels left their first estate, kept not the first estate, but left their habitation. I'm going to come back later to that word habitation because it has some interesting insights. And this somehow involved, just as Sodom and Gomorrah did, fornication, going after strange flesh. Strange flesh. The word is heteros, not allos in the Greek, meaning flesh of a totally different kind.
Okay. That's part 1. And there's so many points that I can make and add, but I want you to go right ahead with part 2. Again, peace be with him.
2 Peter. 1 Peter 3 also has a reference to keep it moving. I'll just take the one in 2 Peter. 2 Peter says, for if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell, and the word he uses, that's what it's translated in English, it happens to be Tartarus, I'll come back to that, and delivered them under chains of darkness to be reserved in judgment, and spared not the old world, but saved Noah, and he goes on. Peter echoes the same thing that Jude says, but he adds a couple of insights. He ties it to the days of Noah. These are angels that sinned. Where are they now? They are in a special holding place. They're not in hell as we think of it.
Right.
Neither Sheol nor Gehenna, someplace else. A place that Peter calls Tartarus. The word Tartarus only appears here in the Greek New Testament. However, we know a lot about the word in the Greek vocabulary. The word Tartarus is a Greek term for a dark abode of woe. It's the pit of darkness of the unseen world. It shows up, for example, in Homer's Iliad, and it's described as being as far below Hades as the earth is below heaven. This is not just a regular place. It's someplace really special. Now, I want to nail another alternative view down, because many people in this audience, probably, I will not ask for a show of hands, have been taught a different view of this passage. A very commonly taught view. And there are many outstanding, excellent authorities that happen to hold this view. But I no longer believe it's very optional for us. There are many things in the Scripture where good men can have different views. But I think it's important for you to consider yourself the viability of the lines of Seth view, because unless you go the other way, there are many other things that I don't think you'll be able to understand. Let me just indulge me, if you will. The lines of Seth view is a view that this word sons of God really refers to the faithful leadership of the Sethites. The daughters of Adam really refers to the daughters of Cain. And they were supposed to be separate. And the sin that's involved is their failure to maintain separation. There is no really good answer as to what the term Nephilim means by this view. That's sort of, frankly, that doesn't have a good response. But that's not elaborated, but that's the essence of the Sethite view, that the sons of God really refers to the good guys, the leadership of the good guys, and they were supposed to stay separate from the Canaanites, but they married the Canaanites, the daughters of Cain, and they married and had offspring. Well, there's some problems with this. The text itself, the sons of God, is never used of believers in the Old Testament. People who impute that view are misapplying New Testament passages. And by the way, Seth was not God and Cain was not Adam. And I'm not being cute here. I'm saying that's what, in effect, they're imputing to the text. And by the way, there's no mention of the daughters of Elohim. So you got some problems. But more important is that there is a grammatical antithesis between the sons of God, daughters of men. You see, the structure is clear. In fact, in Psalm 82, it says, "Ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High, but ye shall die like men and fall like one of the princes." These antithesis shows up in the Old Testament several places. Also, the line of Seth infers that there's a separation they are supposed to keep, but that's a fallacy, because the lines of nations didn't get separated until Genesis 11. We're talking about Genesis 6. This concept of separation was imposed upon Isaac and following, not beforehand. There's no textual basis for that. And by the way, Ishmael was not told to be separate. Don't assume the Arabs today are descendants of Ishmael. We can't prove it. Why? Because Ishmael never kept separate. Small point, but I just thought if there are any Muslims here, I want to have something to offend everyone. I don't want to play favorites. But furthermore, Genesis 6, verse 12 indicts this view, because it says all flesh was corrupted. It doesn't say that one particular group was the problem. The line of Seth also implies that, or infers that the line of Seth was godly. Only Enoch and Noah's 8 were spared of the flood. There aren't any godly people there, except those 9. Also, the text says that the sons of God took wives of all whom they chose. You don't get the impression it was a participative choice. You get the impression they took wives. It doesn't sound like they're too godly in terms of that may be pushing something. Why did the Sethites, if they're so godly, perish in the flood? That's probably the real nail in that coffin. And by the way, Enosh, who was Seth's son, is the one that initiated defiance of God. Most people don't know this because there's a mistranslation in most of our Bibles. In Genesis 4:25, it doesn't say then man began to call upon the name of the Lord as the English would render it. It really says, then man began to profane the name of the Lord in the Targum of Onkelos, the Targum of Jonathan, Kimshi, Rashi, other Jewish, also Christian Jerome, Maimonides in the 12th century. The authorities that, if you really get in behind that verse, you'll discover that our English Bible has a misleading rendering of that. That in the days of Enosh is when apostasy began. And so it's a small point, but it does cloud the idea that the lines of Seth were good guys. The daughters of Cain, the implication of the Cainites were bad guys. Well, first of all, there's no basis for a subset of the daughters of Adam. That's conjecture. The Canaanites were not necessarily godless. If you study Cain's genealogy, following Cain in Genesis chapter 4, you'll discover in verse 18, many of his descendants had the name of God in their names. We don't know, but if you're going to draw a conjecture, it's more likely that even though he was guilty of that sin with Abel, that he repented and he tried to raise his family God-fearing. This idea that the Sethites were good guys and the Canaanites were bad guys is a contrivance of liberal scholarship, not of the text.
See?
And by the way, were the daughters of Seth so unattractive? I don't quite understand. But the other issue is these unnatural offspring as a result of the union. What are these Nephilim? Now, they had supernatural offspring. Now, by the way, when a believer or an unbeliever gets married, they may have monsters, but they don't have, unnatural offspring. And also it implies that there were no X chromosomes among the Sethites. There were no women of renown, only men of renown. And why was Noah's genealogy so distinctively highlighted in Genesis 6:9? Now, in the mouth of two or three witnesses, as I point out in Jude 6 and 7, 1 Peter 3:19 and 20, and 2 Peter 2, verses 4 and 5, even the unique use of the Greek term is fascinating. The New Testament seems to very clearly corroborate what I'll call the angel view of Genesis 6. So let me just summarize. We've got a problem with the text itself. We've got inferred separation, inferred godliness of Sethites, inferred Canaanite subset, unnatural offspring, New Testament confirmations. These are the major, in my mind, indictments of the so-called lines of Seth view, although it's held by many. But here's the thing that may surprise you. There's also post-flood events in the Old Testament and prophetic issues that you will be blind to if you adhere to the line of Seth view. Let's explore some of these. By the way, the angel view prior to the birth of Christ was in the traditional rabbinical literature, Book of Enoch, as I mentioned earlier, the testimony of the 12 patriarchs. It's not a member of the canon, but it does describe the linguistic structure of that day. Josephus Flavius, Septuagint. The early church fathers, Philo of Alexandria, Justin Martyr, Irenaeus, and the whole list, held the angel view. The early church believed in angels. Then where did the line of Seth idea begin in the 5th century? Celsus and Julian the Apostate used the traditional belief in angels to attack Christianity. And Julius Africanus resorted to the Sethite theory as sort of a more comfortable explanation. They're uncomfortable with the angel idea, and understandably. As you look at that, it's pretty weird. Cyril of Alexandria used the line of Seth to repudiate the Orthodox projection, and here's the problem. Augustine picked it up, and he embraced the Sethite theory, and it became the doctrine of the Catholic Church, and thus it still derives to the denominational churches, and it prevailed, of course, as the dominant view into the Middle Ages. Modern scholarship, and I just picked a few, Pember, DeHaan, McIntosh, Delitzsch, Gaebelein, Arthur Pink, Donald Great Barnhouse, Henry Morris, Merrill Unger, Arnold Fruchtenbaum, of course, Hal Lindsey and Chuck Smith as more recent, well-known examples, are angel view people. If you've read Henry Morris's definitive commentary on the Book of Genesis, he, of course, goes into all this for us.
And we thank you, Chuck Mister. Peace be with him. Now I want to go make a few points. And at the same time, let you see something else that I found about the fallen angels. And, it's really a shame that they would say the Book of Enoch is to be banned when they see that Noah is his bloodline. how could you actually exclude your blood relative and say that you exist? Without Enoch, there is no Noah. And in another episode, we'll let you see how the names of the prophets or the lines of leading up to Noah. It gave a prophecy from Adam to Noah, or Adam to Methuselah, that when Methuselah die, his death shall bring the flood. And as we can see, the flood was for a reason. And we will see even more so, because man was very, very corrupt then, and now even worse, because there's another prophecy that says, and yet to be fulfilled, that as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man. So that means that how was it, first of all, in the days of Noah? And does it compare to now? In the days of Noah, there was some terrible things going on, y'all. Terrible. So let's get into these 10 reasons why aliens are actually demons and fallen angels. Okay? And the aliens of our time match the demons and fallen angels mentioned in the Bible in terms of their behavior. Like the Bible predicts, aliens never affirm the deity of Christ, nor do they claim to come in his name. Aliens change their stories to delude man into believing their lies. One example is this, that before man had been to outer space or sent satellites there, aliens were claimed to be from planets such as Jupiter and our solar system. As time went on and man learned more about our planets, we realized that one could live on a planet like Jupiter. That no one can live on a planet like Jupiter, so aliens changed their story. Now they claim to be from other solar systems and star clusters such as Andromeda and Pleiades. More and more lies, because that's what demons do. Though aliens are said to be advanced, it seems they need us for their survival just as fallen angels need human beings to prey on. There are various accounts of aliens taking tissue samples from humans, probing them, or impregnating women. This is the origin of the entities known as incubus and succubus. And number 5, alien abductions are stopped by invoking the name of Jesus. It's interesting to know. Aliens bring ideas to Earth that will help man unite worldwide for a new era of consciousness. This uniting prepares the way for their leader, who is possibly the Antichrist, or the Dajjal, by making mankind forget their religion and loyalty to their countries. Aliens, number 7. Aliens often contact New Agers and occultists as opposed to Christians. This is not always the case, since people from all walks of life have been contacted by aliens, demons. However, I believe that these space brothers are not too interested in contacting Christians. This is because Christians will be able to see through aliens' disguise and know them for what they are. Demons. Okay? Aliens are not opposed to being worshipped by humans. Of course not. They want you to serve them. They also deny their creator, God, the Almighty Yahweh. claiming instead that they are creators. This serves to draw man away from God. Number 9, aliens give man technology, but these advancements are usually destructive. There are secret projects that many governments have in their budget, which are usually for creating new weapons of war. Much of the technology for such weaponry is said to come from extraterrestrials, such as that big head llama. Why don't aliens ever give us life-saving technology? Good question. And number 10, aliens often emit horrible odors, such as sulfur. Some call this smell the stench of hell, since it is a sign of the eternal fire. Okay, well, I could touch a few more points with you, about what I think is to come and what I think we're going through right now, because we are being deceived, because it's only a small number of people that actually know this, of the fallen ones, of the Nephilim, of the actual story, the truth of Genesis 6. I've been doing this for years, many years, for decades now, because it always struck my attention. Horror movies used to always strike me in a way that I laughed instead of got afraid or was interested in some way, and I guess it's because man, that's just some part of our nature. But just take it a step further, I start to read the Bible, and the Bible unlocks all of the power of who to fear and what not to fear, and how you're supposed to live your life as such. And we're deceived right before our eyes with fear. The fear mongering of the police, the fear mongering of their laws. Where do they think this comes from? This is not human. More and more we're becoming AI, artificially intelligent. More and more we're becoming algorithms and robots. Who do you think is behind this? This is a deception. Everything that they're coming up with and out with is nothing to do with bettering you or bringing you close to his name. As a matter of fact, like I said before, you can't even speak Christ's name. You can't even speak those names. And why is that? You never ask yourself that question, that a whole day goes by, or almost at least 16 hours of your time being out with someone, whether you're at work or at play. Does the name Jesus Christ come up, or Yeshua? Does the name Yahweh come up, or the Almighty God, the Most High? Does the words in the Bible come up, or is it just the opposite, to where they ban it? And I can go on to tell you more about Genesis chapter 6, this deception that we're in, the connection with technology, and everything is not in place yet, because they can't deceive you yet, completely. They can't, because we still have some people that's still here. We got almost 8 billion people on this planet, and they want, according to the Georgia Guidestone, they want to get that number down to 500 million. So that means they got to do a whole lot more killing, and they doing it. But they want bigger disasters. Can't you see? We're at the urge of a world war, because they got these new weapons that they just, like they're miles of water to use them. China, Russia, America, the Middle East, everybody, everybody got them, because who's giving it to them? So I thank you for tuning in, and until next time, may God bless you.